Oxide tank is than the oxygen tank. Oxygen is obviously a gas. Nitrous is a liquid, so it's heavier because there's a liquid in this tank, and you'll be able to tell the difference on nitrous tanks whether they're full or empty just by lifting them. Oxygen is always going to weigh this much; it never gets lighter. So be aware of that in terms of why they weigh different. In addition, because this is a gas and this is a liquid, we can put a lot more liquid in here than we can gas. So the nitrous tanks will last you about 4 hours. Your oxygen tank will last you only 2 hours. That's why if you look at our tanks in the other room, we've got twice as many oxygen tanks as we do nitrous tanks. So you will be swapping out the oxygen a little more frequently. You can't really make mistakes on this system. I mean, they've done a good job color coding it. As you can see, this side's blue, this side's green. Okay. The tubings are even blue and green. In addition to that, the connections are completely different, so you can't hook up the wrong one in the wrong spot. They won't go on. And lastly, the gauges themselves. This is the nitrous gauge, I believe. Take a look at it. The gauges are different in that. Yeah, that's the nitrous one. And this is the oxygen one. They look the same, but the difference is, they look the same on the outside, but if you look closely, there's a difference. And that is where they actually attach to the tanks. You have these little pegs. See those pegs sticking up? That's the oxygen one. And if you look at the nitrous one, look at those pegs. See, they're close together.
Far versus close.
Yeah, and so they will only fit on the proper tank that way. And when you first get these tanks, you guys got these from Airgas? I don't know where you have. But no, we got these from Central, which is a much better company. But still, they always include, so they're always going to have this little cap on it. They both have it here. And this is all garbage, and I mean literally all of it. You open it up and you go, oh look, they gave us a little washer. Isn't that nice?
Are we recording this?
Yeah. They gave us a washer. Isn't that nice? Garbage, okay? Never use the washer they give you. They are garbage washers. We don't use those. You pull this like that, and you take this out. That's all garbage. So everything on here is garbage. Even the little washer they give us is garbage. The washers we use are a much higher quality. They're not that little, this is just a cheap plastic washer. The washers you have are these nice metal with the rubber washers. There's one on here already. It's internal in there, so we're not going to use these. These will leak. So that's the only washer we need. You don't need washers on these every time anyway. Eventually you could tear a washer, but that's after you change the tanks many times. So I'm going to slide the tanks in. They do have little things here so they don't rattle around when you're moving around. You can tighten that up. It's not going to fall out of there, but it just keeps them from rattling so much. When I put which one is this? When I put these on, yeah, this is the oxygen one. Don't tighten those up until you get them on. I want you guys to see this. When I put the gauges on, I know it's the nitrous one because you look here and see the holes are tight together right there. Mm-hmm. I know it's this one. It falls. As you can see it, so I slid it down. I haven't finished tightening up these yet, but put it down, it falls into place, that washer seats up nicely against there, and I tighten it up. These I would just leave on all the time until you're ready to change your tanks. Make sure they're on firm, make sure it's nice, flush, and flat. If you ever hear any leaking gas, turn it off, and you turn it off up here. I'll show you how to do that, and you can retighten that so it's not leaking at all. Leaking is expensive. We don't want to leak. Okay, now I like to keep it a little tidier so it looks nicer for the patient. So I will kind of keep these wrapped around there and bring them up, something like that. Every time you change the tank, you have to redo that, but rather than just have the coils sticking out everywhere. Again, if I tried to hook up any of this on this other side, on the oxygen side of the machine, it wouldn't even fit. It's a whole different connection.
I love that. Good tank, good tool.
Yeah, we don't like to say it's idiot proof, but I'm just gonna say it's idiot proof. All right, so again, even though they gave me a little washer here, all garbage, we don't want any of that. The oxygen tanks, these little ones, have an opening valve on them, so it's kind of nice. You're gonna have to use the wrench on the nitrous tanks. I don't know why they're using different ones, different tanks, or different valves for each tank. But again, this is the oxygen one. It's got the two pegs wider apart. It won't fit on the nitrous side. And if you look here, you can see the two holes are wider apart. You gotta, to get it on, you gotta pull this straight up. Loosen up this so it'll fit down there. Again, that'll sit nice and flush against there. And now, tighten those too soon. So now that's on there nicely. I get that nice and firm, so it's not gonna leak. All right. Green. Now, I also like to turn the tank so I can see the valves. I explained earlier that because the nitrous is a liquid, it's not gonna, the gauge on the valve is not going to give you an accurate reading. It's only going to show pressure. As pretty as I like it. But I'll show you what I mean. So when you guys are changing tanks, you're not gonna mess with any of the stuff that I'm doing right now because this is just the initial install. But we're just gonna pull these off, put a new tank in and slide this back over. You don't even have to disconnect it from this spot.
Okay.
And then what I'm mentioning is when I like to turn it, so when I'm using the unit, I can see the valve. So I turn them both, the gauge, I'm sorry, so I can see the gauge.
Gauge is face front.
Yeah, so I just like them face front, just so I can keep an eye on them. So this one will show pressure when I turn it on. And then it can show a lot of pressure. When there's people who haven't been properly trained on the system, they go, hey, something's wrong with our system. It showed 1,000 pounds of pressure, whatever it did, 100 pounds. And then 5 minutes later, it was empty. How could that be? It's because it's a liquid and all it feels is pressure. When the liquid's gone, it just drops. This one, however, is going to be accurate because it's a gas. So you can judge how much oxygen is left in the tank. You really can't on nitrous unless you take the tank out and feel it, but you'll know because the machine's gonna squawk.
Okay.
Who's our test dummy?
You go first.
Okay, come here.
It's not bad.
It's fun.
I will sample out.
Yeah, I think everyone should try it if they're gonna administer it. So take that part there. Okay, so that's the mouthpiece. This is the evacuation.
They're so broken like humans.
Okay, and then we gave you one extra thing, which a lot of you guys weren't out here yet. Put that on there. Make sure it's all together tightly. So this is how your tubing is going. You're going to in every bag you're going to have this. Those plugs aren't in there. Okay, and those plugs are separate for some reason. Usually they're in there. So a whole bag of nose plugs. These are actually the nicer ones. That's why. I will tell you, the company training is everybody wears a nose plug, right? Because people they think they're breathing out of their mouth, they're not. So we put a nose plug. People hate nose plugs though. So what I usually do is I will hold up a nose plug and let them know that if you don't breathe only in and out of your mouth, in and out, that's the important, because they'll breathe in through their mouth because they want the gas and they'll breathe out through their nose. In and out through their mouth, we're gonna put this on there, okay? And maybe then I'll just put it here, but I will threaten them with a nose plug all day long. And that's usually enough to scare people straight. Okay, so you've got, on this tubing, you've got the mouthpiece. Again, we don't use a mask because the patient has to self-administer this. If they get too high, it falls out of their mouth. All this comes off if you wanted to. Everything comes apart easily. We're gonna go ahead and stretch these tubings out, right? This is the main one here that goes right on the front of the Pro Nox unit. This is the evacuation tubing. This one I want stretched out and I want it just laying on the floor because nitrous is heavier, so when they exhale, they're gonna exhale back to the mouthpiece unless we threaten them with a nose plug and then we had to put it on them. But either way, they're put out to the mouthpiece and that exhausted air is gonna come down here into the floor. The patient's gonna absorb 80% of it. The rest is gonna dissipate down low. We do have nitrous badges you guys can wear when you're first starting. Alexis will help you with that in terms of how we're gonna monitor. Because some offices were still a little nervous. There's some older studies showing some problems with nitrous, but it doesn't really apply to this system because this works so much differently than the older dental systems. I mentioned earlier, I included these 90-degree angles because I love them. Because right now,